specific environment, their specific risk model, their specific policy interpretations, their specific requirements. We haven't gotten there yet, but that is something we're interested in doing. And finally, I'll say, the framework this is absolutely vital to understand. The framework is a living thing, all right? I mean, the idea here was not that once we were done with this, we were done for all eternity. Things change, new scenarios arise, circumstances change. We rethink scenarios, and we've had several occasions where we sat down and said, okay, do we still think that makes sense? And in some of the cases we said yes, and in some of the cases we said, no, actually, that doesn't make sense. And so we're going to adjust that value this way or that way, because this is leading us to places which aren't sensible to us. Ultimately, it's a matter of judgment. I mean, this thing is meant to make the process more systematic, more comprehensive, to structure it. But at the end of the day, ultimately, it's people making judgments about risk, and people making judgments about what the appropriate risk drivers are for a particular requirement, what the appropriate principles are from which to derive the policy interpretations. This is by no means algorithmic. It's by no means automated. You don't turn a crank, as I said, and the policy, you don't feed in. I'm not sure what you would feed in at the front end, and you don't turn the crank, and the policies come out the other end. More than anything else, the framework is a conceptual tool. It's a cognitive tool in some ways for helping us to think better and more systematically about these issues. But at the end of the day, it always comes down to human judgment, and as a result, we've had some pretty lively discussions about the contents of some of these cells.
I have one other, and you mentioned these lively discussions, and have you come up with either cases where I presume at some point you've looked at existing policies as you've been building this framework, and you come up with cases either where you said, well, here's the existing policy, and the framework would say something different, and geez, there's something really messed up in coming up with the framework, or the other way around, where it's like, well, the framework says this, and the existing policy, and on further thought, the existing policy was just way out of whack.
Yes. Yes, there have been. I mean, before, in the earliest days, when the framework was just this big annotated outline, before PowerPoint descended upon us in all its glory, part of what we did in developing that outline was to do a policy gap analysis on our existing policies, and trying to figure out, where the gaps are. And so we did do that, but that didn't speak to what you were getting at, which was, oh, here's a policy, but it's saying the wrong thing. And we did run into situations like that, where in trying to fill in the cells in those tables using the framework, somebody would say, but hey, our existing policy says we only have to do that, not that. That's a lot more work. Why do we have to do that? And in some cases, we concluded that the existing policy needed to be revamped. Yeah.
Part of what you said was, you mentioned, for example, HIPAA, and there's also other NIST specifications and things of that nature. And I guess because you keep saying that people are ultimately making the judgment for that policy and things like that, but isn't a big part of it also since, for example, your corporation works with the government, that they have their own policies that have to be in place within your policy specifications. For example, if, let's say, you're doing a contract with something that deals with health, and then you have to look at the HIPAA specifications, and if your policy specifications do not map onto HIPAAs in one way, shape, or form, then it's not really just a judgment that you guys make. It's also part of what they specify they need.
Yeah, let me see. Go all the way back here to try and address that. Okay. Well, first and foremost, the framework recognizes and incorporates legal requirements. Legal requirements are legal requirements. We have to do them. Having said that, if you've looked at the security rules, if you looked at the privacy rules, you know that there's some flexibility there. And so it isn't all sort of cut and dried. Okay, I think I'm getting almost to where I want to be. Yes. Where was it? Okay, never mind. I'm not going to find it now. So, number one, yes. I mean, if we're bound by law or regulation to do something a particular way, then that's what we do. And the framework certainly is intended to reflect that. It's also the case that we get sponsors who say, well, I want you to treat all information connected with this project this way, or I want you to treat all of the stuff marked that we're giving you marked FOUO, that's for official use only, with this level of protection. The framework provides for default levels. In the absence of any other direction from the sponsor, it basically says, this is what you do. This is what you do for FOUO. This is what you do for this, that, or the other thing. If the sponsor says, do this, MITRE does this, regardless of what the framework says.